Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Seth Williams. You're listening to the REtipster podcast. Today I'm talking with Jeremy Brown. Jeremy is the managing partner of Legacy Acres, where he specializes in land deals that most people never touch, things like rezoning and subdivides and complex acquisitions, with over 100 completed deals across multiple states. But what makes Jeremy especially interesting isn't just what he invests in, it's how he got there. So long before land investing, Jeremy spent nearly 2 decades in the publishing world. He's authored 13 books, helped countless entrepreneurs tell their stories, and used books not as products, but as strategic tools to build authority and relationships and even fund businesses, often without ever selling a single copy on Amazon. And then life forced a pivot. When Jeremy's son was born with severe bilateral clubfoot, his family spent years traveling the country seeking specialized treatment. During that season, Jeremy and his family lived on the road in a Sprinter van, and land investing became the vehicle that allowed him to support his family financially, even during weeks when he could barely work more than 10 or 15 hours. And that experience reshaped everything: how he views risk, how he structures deals, and how he talks to sellers. It also led to the development of what he now calls the BURN process, B-U-R-N, which is a framework that teaches investors how to use their own life story, skills, and credibility to build trust and uncover off-market opportunities. Today, Jeremy is transitioning fully into real estate, building businesses alongside his 5 sons, and grounding every venture in 2 core convictions: truth and honor. So with that, Jeremy, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Seth, it's awesome to be here. When we first met, we met in Colorado, and told my sons, hey, I met Seth Williams, who makes the Storyland podcast. So you're helping me become even more popular with my young sons. So I really appreciate this. And I'm grateful to be on here. This is a great honor.
Interestingly, when we first met, I was almost more excited that your kids listen to Storyland than the REtipster thing.
Yeah.
I was just like, wow, cool. Like, I don't usually meet Storyland listeners, and it was nice to meet one right up close. So it's great to meet you then. Let's hear your story. So I know there's a really interesting journey that you went through and have gone through in life, not just what got you into land investing, but just your whole family's history. Tell us all about that. How did you get into land, and what were you doing before that?
Yeah. So how I got into land, let's start there. So, I always wanted to buy land, and we really started to want to homestead. This is like 2018, 2019. You can see where this is going. I'm watching the market, and I'm just doing what everybody does. I'm going to Zillow, I'm going to Redfin. I'm just looking at what is on the market. And I watched prices that I thought were expensive in 2018, 2019, double, triple, more during the COVID period. And so really, I just started to say, okay, I've got to figure out another way. And there's got to be another way to do this. That's when I ran across your video, Seth. It was like 7 ways to make money off your land or something like that. And like so many other land investors, you were one of the first people that I locked into to learn there's a different way to acquire land and acquire property. And there's a business model to this. So you were the reason I got in, and the spear tip of what got in. You were the first couple courses I ever bought, went through them all. It was in favor of my natural thought process, deal making. That's what got me interested. And then what got me really, really in, like you mentioned, was when my son was born, and I had to kind of like double, triple my income pretty quickly. And I had to figure out another solution.
Tell us about your son. How old is he now?
He is going to be 5 on the 21st of January of this year. So 4, almost 5. And when he was born, basically like his feet should look like this. They're like upside down, turned inward, and basically like facing his face. And there were some other things going on with him too that my wife could kind of sense, but basically true to kind of what we do. We're in the hospital. We see this happen. And I'm like, you know what? We're going to pray, and this is going to be done before we leave. And then it just kind of didn't work out that way. And my wife just started to study kind of voraciously. And I think she had a lot of knowledge before we even left the hospital 24 hours later. Severe bilateral clubfoot is the name. And then we had to figure out, like, what are we going to do? And they said, here are the surgeries that we are thinking he's going to need if you ever want him to kind of walk normal. And we had a lot of big, scary conversations that we just said, this is information. This is data. This isn't the way. It isn't the truth. It doesn't have to be that. This is another option we have. And so we just thought through that, prayed through that, and we felt like, hey, let's go out there. If surgeries are the way, okay, there's a way and there's a fallback for us. And you'll kind of hear that as a theme. You're like, what's the next step if it doesn't work? What's the fallback? We felt like if we go out and we try everything under the sun and nothing works, we'll just come back and do the surgeries. That'll be it. So we just started to say, who's out there? What therapies are out there? What options do we have? And where do we go next? And I remember I had a notebook and I had like 20 some different hospitals, organizations that I just started reaching out to say, hey, what do you do? How do you do it? What's the timelines and everything? And that led us to our first trip, which was Dallas, Texas. We were not a traveling family at all. We didn't travel ever. I had a son who was, I think, almost 2 at the time, my youngest, and he had never been more than about 30 minutes away from home his whole life. So we did not travel. I was like, no. We had to go to Dallas. From Sioux Falls, South Dakota to Dallas. We were chasing a historic Dallas ice storm that was there in 2021. We were trying to beat that down there. We came into Dallas right when that started to happen. And so the city shut down for a week, but we got there. I got a trailer, had never driven with a trailer before. And here we are, we have 3 kids, one of them a newborn, and 2 weeks after his birth, my wife somehow was able to do this. And we drove all the way down to Dallas because of the weather and everything. It took us almost 30 hours to actually get there, which it's not a long drive, but there was just a ton of weather. That's what started our process of let's find experts, let's go to them, and let's see what happens, and then see where we go next.
How long did this whole period last where your family is living in a Sprinter van? And I guess, why were you doing this? Is it because you were traveling from one place to the other to try to find treatment for your son? Like, is that why you chose to do that? Or was there some other reason you wanted to live that lifestyle?
We weren't like full-time in the van, but we were in Dallas for like 3 months. And once that was over, he would have times where he would improve and then we would plateau. We'd have to find a new solution. And that was kind of the step-by-step process. You'll hear this as I get into land. What is my next step? And so we would find somebody, we would talk to them. We'd say, here's this therapy modality in California or Kansas City or Chicago. Let's go there. Let's get some therapy done. Let's see what happens. And that'll tell us how long we're going to be there and where we're going to go next. And that was kind of the step-by-step process that we did. So true to like investing in your family, we need a way to travel that isn't going to be super stressful on us, super stressful on the boys, and try to make this a fun experience for them. And so a dream some way down the road was like, someday we're going to get a van and we'd like to like travel around. And that was like down the road, like way down the road. And that's when I was like, let's see if we can find this. And I just started to do what I do, which is like, where are all the places you can buy a van? How do you buy them? How do you find the deals? And then eventually we found our way into a van, and it was really for ease of travel and to keep the family good as we were in such uncertain times of we may go here for a week, we may be here for a month, and we may go from Kansas City to San Diego next. We didn't really know exactly what.
So it sounds like, in a way, you were kind of doing this out of necessity, because when you're going to these different places, you need a convenient-ish and not costing a fortune way to live in these places and be mobile. Is that accurate?
We chose to do it, but it was out of necessity. Like, we have to. And here's the theme here, Seth. I think we have goals and aspirations and desires and dreams like everybody does. If you're listening to this podcast, that's what you're doing. You're wanting to do something new. I think a big key to unlocking resources that we have in us, that God has given us, or anything like that, is problems. We don't want problems. Nobody goes and looks for them in the morning. But when we can really say, here's this problem I'm having, or this issue, or this thing, whatever it is that I'm trying to avoid, that's like the key to being able to handle those well. And I think our problems are blessings in so many different ways. So like people trying to get into land, you may have a bunch of barriers and reasons why this isn't going to work. And I'm going to say like those reasons why it's not going to work are probably some of the keys to what's going to make you unique and different and able to do this business.
I like what you said earlier, just in passing, about how you were talking to different medical specialists about, surgery is an option, and how you kind of just took this as like data. And the reason I like that is because, I don't know about you, but I hear a lot of things in the world and social media, on the news, podcasts, people saying like, this is the way, like this is how it must be done. And I think in reality, like, it's very, very rare that that's actually the truth. It's more like this is a way it can be done. You don't have to do it this way. And maybe it is the best way. I don't know. But just taking a step back and realizing like nobody actually knows your unique situation and specifics to the point that they can really shout at you like that and be truthful about it.
Exactly. It was the way for that person. So like even for coaching programs and everything, like, so I've been working with authors for 17 years and I work with like the Seth Williams expertise level of authors. They have a very successful business. They have a ton of content, no time, no desire to write. They don't want to do that, but they know that a book is going to be a key resource for them. So I just said, we'll interview you, we'll write it for you, we'll do it all for you, and we'll help market it for you. But how we were able to do that is I interviewed people, very successful people. We think it's somewhere between 500 and 1,000 of them. I don't really know. I stopped counting after a certain point. Hundreds of very successful people, interviewing them about why they're successful from 8 to 30 plus hours, one-on-one. Like I'm finishing a company right now. It's probably the most impressive company I've ever interviewed. I've sat with their founders for hours and hours about why this company is successful as it is. And so I know that this is the way for this person, but it doesn't have to be your way. And there's a time period where you do follow somebody. Like when I got into land, I said, I'm going to follow this person's way exactly. I'm not going to change anything until I get so good at it, I can start to innovate on top of their foundation. So there's a time and a place for that. But yeah, it's data, it's information.
I think maybe the way people talk like that is it sells stuff ultimately, because it's like, well, if I can just simplify this and get you to stop thinking and just say, hey, just do this. I know what I'm talking about. Look how confident I am. I think that effectively sells things really well, even if it's not totally true, or, there's lots of other nuance and variables that just aren't mentioned in the pitch.
People follow conviction, and you could be convicted of the wrong thing and people still follow you.
So in this season, when you're in the Sprinter van, what was like the most difficult moment in that whole stretch of time? I mean, I can just imagine anything happening to my child or the things that you went through. Do you deal with stress and uncertainty well? Like, are you and your wife just well equipped to do that? Or was it like devastating to go through this whole process? Like, just tell me about the emotional journey you went through.
It's hard for me to talk about this whole thing, which I'm going to do without getting into like our faith grounds us and roots us. If we didn't have that, I would not be here talking about this, like how this was so great. There's no way. But we had been through some stuff like a lot of families have. And we just make sure, as my wife and I are communicating, we're on the same page. Like everything makes us better. I'm such a believer in your problems are your blessings. They're going to make you better. You're going to be better than you thought before. But the most stressful time, I'll tell you, because it ties directly into land, is we're going to Chicago. We just found this new healing modality. It was called CFT, which my wife is now like a national expert in. But we just heard about it. Called the guy who invented it. He referred us to Chicago. He referred us on like a Sunday. That week we were going. At this point, Seth, I'm like, I don't know exactly how we're going to pay for all of this. Like we're driving to Chicago. There's 18 therapy sessions. They are not cheap. They are not covered by insurance. I'm not talking to my wife about this, not because I'm hiding it from her, because I'm like, there's stress that I'm going to take on that she's not going to know about and have to worry about. And so I'm thinking like, this is going to be interesting, because it was like right around 18 grand was going to be like the whole all-in cost of that trip. And I'm like, well, they're going to find a way to pay for this, or I'm just going to have to make a payment schedule, I guess. And at the end of the day, I was like, Lord, if this is the end, if we run out of money, that's the end. We'll go back, we'll do the surgeries, and that's it. So like, we're very committed, but we're holding the result with an open hand. Like we don't grip onto it, because that might not be the best thing for us, and we don't realize that right now. But I'm driving to Chicago, $18,000. This is going to be something. The therapist calls my wife and says, hey, I have another therapist that we can both work on Bennett at the same time and like double the therapy, which to me, I'm thinking double the cost, which it was. And my wife was like, hey, they can do this. Like, should we do it? And I was like, might as well. Let's go. Like, we're here. Let's just maximize this thing. And I started to get in the suburbs of Chicago. I pull over to a gas station to get some gas, and I get a deal done that made me just a little bit over $18,000 in the back of the van. And the guy was like, I need to wire this money to you like right now. He had some cash burning holes in his pockets. I had some great deals. We did a deal. That's when I made it. And he was like, I'm wiring this to you today. You'll hear this too. Like, I got so many reps in. I built so many relationships on performance, on history, on following through. I told him, I'm closing on these next week, but they can be yours. And he said, yep, I want them. I'm sending you the money right now. Okay. And I hadn't even closed on them yet. But that was probably one of the moments where I was like, okay, I might be okay at this and I might be better than maybe I think. And I'm just going to keep doing it. It's working. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And I didn't try to innovate. I didn't try to make a big vision. Even Seth, 22 years ago, when I started full-time entrepreneurship at 19, I didn't have a big vision or a big idea. I just wanted to be with my son more than I was. And I was going to be his daycare by day and build a business by night. And that's just what I did. So I've never had like this big grandiose idea, and I didn't then. But I was like, this is meeting our needs. I'm adding value. I'm providing a good service. I'll keep doing this until it stops working.
You had mentioned in passing earlier how when this clubfoot issue came up with your son, you'd prayed about it. I don't know what you prayed exactly, but it sounded like maybe you were asking for healing right now and it didn't happen. Have you ever had moments when like you felt like your prayers were not being answered, like they're being ignored? And yet you also have these moments where you're making, 18 grand in the back of a van. So it's like, he is there. He is answering your prayers, just not in the way that you thought he would.
Yeah. And I think that was kind of the prayer initially, Seth, is just like, Lord, I know he's a storyteller. I've seen the pattern of how he tells stories in so many people's lives. There's a pattern to the stories. Lord, like, this is your story, man. You know Bennett. He's your child too. You have him. You know him. You have a plan for him. And we are just submitting to that. Like, we know that and we are here for it. So yes, today I want this healed now. And I know you can do it. I've seen it happen. I know that's possible. And that wasn't the story. So it wasn't like, oh, this isn't working necessarily. It was like, that's just not the story right now. We're open to what that story is. And we are gung ho here for it and committed to it. The old saying, I think, is so true. I'm going to pray like it's all up to God. And my life became like a prayer. Like I was constant communication with the Lord, like daily bread for real. And also just doing everything I could possibly do. So like when I say I'm going to Chicago, I need 18 grand. I don't have it. It's not like I just was like, I have no clue. Throne Publishing was still working, still operates to this day. I just needed 18,000 more. You want to set up options for yourself. I had many different options and fishing lines out there, so to speak, that I was fishing with. Nothing had bit yet. And I know when something bites, I'm ready. So we want to have options. We want to have preparedness for those instances. We're going to pray like it's all up to God, and we're just going to trust him. And Seth, I could tell you so many stories about how he dropped different wisdom, different plans, processes along the way, where I woke up in the morning and the first thought was like, let's do this. Called that person, perfect timing, everything worked out. And there was also times where we just drove 6 hours one way, almost 20 sometimes, for a therapy that they did the therapy wrong. And it actually made his feet worse. And we didn't know that till 6 months into it. Like, we've had those times too. And we know we're imperfect, and so are people. We're all practicing. We're all doing experiments. And the land thing was an experiment. And I still approach it as a big experiment. We fail, we win, we make mistakes. When we drop the ball, we pick it up.
Do you think you're closer to God as a result of these trials you and your family went through? Like, if this had never happened, if things are just easy and fine, what would your relationship with God look like, do you think?
That is an excellent question. Without a doubt, we're closer to the Lord. No question. And better, stronger because of it. And I think that God didn't make my son have clubfoot. That was not like, hey, I'm going to do this. I don't think he makes bad things happen. I think we have free will. I think we have a world that's kind of broke. It's not as it was meant to be. And so because of that, things happen that aren't supposed to happen. And so I don't think God made those things happen. That's not in his character. He has a character. He never sways from his character and what he says and what he does. And I can trust that. So I know, like, hey, this was not what was supposed to happen, but he can make good from it. We had mold exposure this last year, black mold, airborne, had to throw away everything. It was the first time I sat down with my sons and my wife and made them a vow. We are in a place, we have to throw away all of our stuff. My kids are throwing away their toys. That was very, very difficult, more difficult than clubfoot for whatever reason. And I felt like I have to vow to my family now of hey, boys, we're throwing away these things now, but we're going to buy all new things, and we're going to buy them better than what you had now. And things are going to be better than they were before this happened. That was my vow to them. It was the first time I ever sat down and looked at them and spoke it out. I wanted to say, this is how we're going to be, and this is how God does things. This is what he does. He takes the bad stuff and he can make something of it if we're game for it, if we're like with him in it. And it's not easy and it's messy, but it works. At the end of the day, it works.
You've said that land investing literally funded your son's treatments. I know we can't really know the answer to this, but I'm just curious your thoughts on it. Do you think God still would have provided for you if you hadn't discovered the land business? Like, what if you just never got into it? Would it have come from somewhere else?
100%. Something. He uses us for how he made us too. Like, if you want to know the best way to use an invention, go to the inventor. And he made me an operator. That is just how he made me. One of my most down days as an entrepreneur, I was struggling. I've been there like 10, 12 years. And I'm like, man, I'm just not turning the corner. This is not going great. I took one of those strength finder tests that tells you like what kind of a career you should be in. It was like an entrepreneurial one. Cause I'm like, I need to see if I should even be a business owner. Like if this is something I should do or just go work for somebody, which I don't think is a bad thing. I took it and it was like the highest possible score you could be to be an entrepreneur. And I was like, I'm stuck. I'm unemployable. I can't work for somebody else. I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm bad at it. And it actually was like a downer for me. But he knows how to work with us and how to use the resources he's placed around us. He's the greatest strategist that you could think of. And I just want to be in communication with him, be like, okay, man, I'm listening. And when you drop something on me, I'm writing it down. I think that's the big key. The only thing I'll say about that, Seth, is I think if you want to build your faith, if you want to know if God's talking to you or not, write out a specific question, write it down and say, if I asked another person this question, could they give me an answer? Like, is it clear? Is it a good measurable question? Write it down. And then any little tiny thing at all for the next week or even couple of days of like, I think God's talked to me about this or that. You just write it down and you'll be amazed. You'll have a full piece of paper. But so often we're in the midst of the whirlwind of the day, the phones, the screens that suck our memory. We rationalize it. He'll never not talk, but he might say no, or he might say not now, or he might say yes.
Tell me a little bit more about your publishing career. I've heard you mention it here and there, but I'm not sure I fully understand what this consisted of or what exactly you did. Did you just publish your own stuff or did you publish stuff for other people? And how did you make money at this if you were not selling on Amazon?
I did publish a lot of my own materials. We had 500, 600 other books somewhere in there. It's over 500 is kind of the round numbers we say. But when I was writing my first book, I never should have wrote a book to begin with. It was a horrible book. I tell people, if you ever get that book, my first one I wrote, you should just throw it in the garbage. There's maybe 2 or 3 left in circulation. It's a really bad book. But I sat down. I was a sales coach at the time. And I was coaching salespeople, which I also don't know how I did, but I was doing that. And I was like, you know what? If I write a book, people will think I really know what I'm talking about. Like it's authority marketing. And so I said, what little knowledge I have, I'm going to put it in a book and I will be an expert then. I was competing for contracts with other companies that had been in business longer than I'd been alive. And so I've got to have authority here. And so I sat down in a Scooter's coffee shop to write my book. And I'm like, I'll get it done in a weekend. Let's just knock it out. I don't have that much to say. I realized I am a really bad writer and I forgot how bad of a reader I am. So I said, I've got to figure this out because I don't know how to write. I'm really bad at it, but I can talk and communicate. So how do I pair that up? So I essentially structured an interview for myself, whereas I spoke. The interview questions were designed and structured in a way that they went in line with the book structure so that as I answered the questions, my answers became the book. I then recorded that, got it transcribed the good old fashioned way by a human back then, took the transcription, edited that down into a book. And that's how I got my book written. And I just gave the thing away. Thank God it never went on Amazon. Some people might still be able to find it to this day, but I just gave it away as a giveaway to drive leads into my coaching business. And, long story short, I went from just working in Sioux Falls, South Dakota to where it's downloaded in over 20 countries. And it really opened up a lot of doors for me in that world. And then people started to ask, like, how did you do that? And I showed them like, hey, here's how I wrote it. Here's what I did. And there was no Amazon KDP back then. I had to go to a guy and find the right people to really learn how to do it. I never really became a designer or an editor. I just found the people and had the people do it. But then people just ask me, would you do that for me? And I thought, well, this would be a great business for my 20s because I didn't go to college. So if I can sit with a successful person, interview them about why they're successful, that's a great business for my 20s. And that's how it started. That's what we do is we would take people who said, I've got a lot of stories, I've got a lot of knowledge, I don't have the time and I'm not a writer, so let's do it together. And entrepreneurs, good ones, think that way of like, I don't have to do it, I just need to have the right people in place to help me do it and I'll oversee it. That's what we did in the book world. How do you make money with books without having it on Amazon? I'm releasing my first real estate book right now. I'm going to use that to give to potential investors and people in the land space as a value add. Here's my knowledge, my expertise. I talk about all the things that I know, which may not be a lot, but here it is. And it just builds authority. It builds credibility. So I'm not trying to make money off of a $20 transaction. I'm trying to make money off of an investor relationship that could be opened up because of this, where we make a couple $1 million over the next 10 years. It's not about the book sales. It's about what's the business around the book.
But if it's not on Amazon, though, how do they even know that you exist in the first place or know that you even have a book? Are you just making like a single page website and then like paying for ads somehow or?
No, I tried all that. Very old school. So you'll find me like the more niche somebody becomes, the more easy it is to find potential prospects. And then when you call that prospect up, the easier it is to get in their door because they recognize you as an authority expert in a very specific niche that is highly relevant to them. So I write books, especially my own, for a very specific person to solve a very specific problem. The greatest thing of how I use books, Seth, nothing I have found beats it. And I've tried the stuff. I would make my list of people that I would be like, that person, I can add a lot of value to them. We can do a lot of business together. I mail them a handwritten note with my book. I handwrite the to address. I handwrite the from address, regular old FedEx box, nothing fancy. When I know they get it, I follow up with a phone call. That to me has just been a home run every time I've seen my clients use it, every time I've used it. I wrote a book called Get It Done because the mantra of my clients were like, I need to get this book done. I just need to get it done. And it's kind of my mentality. Wrote a book called Get It Done. It's about how to get a book done. And I never released it on Amazon. It's available nowhere books are sold. I mailed it to people. And it got to a point, Seth, where we're like, every time a book goes out, it's going to generate $1,000 in revenue. That became what was my marketing strategy for a little bit. And then you do that for a year and you don't have to do it again.
Do you think books are losing their value or becoming commoditized? Or I ask this because I know in the blog space, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure blogs are valued less now than they were 10 years ago because it's just so stinking easy for anybody, even if you don't know anything, to just whip out a blog post with ChatGPT and it's done. Do you think people are perceiving the value of books differently when it's so easy to write a book?
That is the question right now in the publishing space. So you got AI coming out. AI is helping simple people become prolific content creators. And I think people are becoming more and more sensitive to that. But a book is such a different format and you have to be locked in to keep turning those pages. So here's what I think is going to happen in the publishing space and in writing. I think that certified human content is going to become in very much high demand. And it's going to weed out authors from the AI people or anything. And it might be out there. I don't know if it is yet, but soon there will be. There'll be like a book distribution website for human certified books. Only human beings. And I think that'll be the place people go, majority of them anyways, maybe a good portion of the market. And it'll also show people like, here's who like the for real writers and authors are. And I think that'll be a pretty big game changer. I don't know when that's going to happen. Maybe it's already out there. It's going to happen at some point. But I think books still have a relevance, a physical thing in the mail, not the digital stuff. Kindles, people don't read them and they don't retain it. Like the data clearly shows that. And I saw the whole iPad craze when the iPads came about. None of that really came to be what they say were going to happen. And I've seen that with waves of technology. We tend to overhype them in the beginning. It's human nature. But I do think to do a book, there is a higher barrier to entry that you have to pay. And because of that, I think the authority marketing value of a book is going to stay there for a minute. I'm not going to say how long. It's pretty safe for a little while, especially when like I'm finishing my book right now. I'm 100 hours probably into this thing. And I know how to do this efficiently. It's just really hard when you're doing it. It's difficult. Best quote I heard about writing a book was, writing a book is easy. All you have to do is stare at the piece of paper until your forehead bleeds. And I think that's kind of true. So I think they have relevance if they're done right, if they're done authentically. Not like you can't use AI for what it's usable for, but it shouldn't write your book. If I wanted to keep building my publishing business, I'd build a whole department about how we'll fix your AI book, because that's big. But I do think they're going to continue to be relevant.
Yeah, I think what I've found is AI has an actually really important and useful place when it comes to refining and improving what you've already put down. Like, the thoughts have to come from you. You explain it the best way you can, then it can basically kind of reframe it and say it better and easier to read. But if you start with that, if you don't actually know what you're talking about and you tell it to write it, I mean, it may actually get to like a mid-grade, reasonably knowledgeable level, but it's really hard to replicate the expert level, like people who just truly understand it from straight up life experience. I don't know. Maybe AI could get there someday. I just don't really know how, because it hasn't actually been through it,
It's a big rabbit hole we could go down of like where I see AI influencing content creation. It's like anything. It's a double-edged sword. There's going to be some great things. There's going to be some people that get exposed. And I think it's going to be good. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be really, really good.
So this whole book publishing world, how exactly did that skill translate into land investing? And I think this is an important question because a lot of people, myself included, they kind of look at their old career, their old life, their job, whatever it was they did in life, and they look at it sort of like, yeah, that's my old life. Doesn't matter anymore. That's history. I'm on to bigger and better things now. But I think in many cases, maybe all cases, there's something that you became an expert at in your old life that you can carry forward to what you're doing now. It's really important to realize that because it sort of gives you an unfair competitive advantage that everybody else doesn't have because they didn't have your expertise. How did that work for you? Like, what was your expertise in the publishing world that you brought into land investing?
That is an outstanding question. I think it's the question, especially when somebody's coming in to land and you're starting a whole new business. And it might not be directly correlated to your past business or your past career or anything at all like that. But everybody has resources within you. You've got resources, knowledge, wisdom, experience. You've got relationships that you've built. When I came into land, my advantage in publishing was, and why I went so quickly into rezones, subdivide, messy title stuff, complicated deals is, man, publishing a book, when I'm taking an author from idea to a book in their hand, is a long form relationship of high trust. You have to touch it every day. They have to feel like you're touching it every day. They're high performers with high expectations over a year's time. Then doing that at scale, where we've got 30, 40, 50 of them at once. It was more complicated than I gave myself credit for ever. And I had built a certification around that business. So other people were coming through, getting certified in our processes. That helped me kind of be like, I think this is more complex than I'm giving myself credit for. So when I came over to land, Seth, I remember like another game-changing moment for me in land. I had a seller call me. I was like, how many properties do you have? Do you have more? And he's like, yeah, I've got actually like 5 of them, all in the same county. I was like, oh, I didn't know like a portfolio takedown. It was simply like, you've got them, let's do a deal. Sold them to me. And then eventually within a week or so, I sold all those off, made like $6,000. And I was like, I just put these deals together and that was the work. The work is done. In publishing, I would put a deal together. Here's the author, here's the right writer, designers, editors, put the whole structure, process, timeline, get the deal. Now we do all the work. And I was like, I just did a deal and that was the work. That was amazing to me, Seth. So that was another part of my mentality of it was a lot harder than I perceived land to be in terms of what's the fundamental skill set I need to bring to the table that I should not delegate ever to make this business work. In the publishing world, it was project management and people management. In the land space, it was really just your ability to do a deal, tell a story around that deal, and connect everybody throughout that process. So it was like project management, managing talent, understanding uncertainty. You've got to work with one step at a time. If you're in a new county or even a new deal in the same county, there's nuance to the whole thing. There's a lot of details in this deal. And so like I catch issues in warranty deeds like all the time. I just did a deal where I sold like 3 notes last week. I didn't realize it, but I guess they were like complicated notes and we did a complicated deal, got it done. But man, I'm used to proofing a book. Now I don't proof every word of a book, but I'm the guy that they have to come to and who writes the check if there's an error. And that was one of our convictions. Like, we need to have an error-free book because they're not common. I think we had 50 pages of closing docs. Proofing those was easy, but found a ton of errors in them. So like, there's a lot of transferable skills with those, but you have to be open to it and you can't just leave them behind you. Like, my old life is done. Here I am moving forward. People have a tendency to do that. You can bring a lot with you, even in how you present yourself and storytell to sellers, to other people doing deals, to funders. You got to know how to tell your story well. So you're not like, here I am starting fresh. You have to understand what assets do you have to present and that give you some authority and give you some experience to bring them into land. You have to do that really well.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the complexity of putting together and publishing a book. I made my first kids storybook, Luke and the Magical Marker, for the Storyland podcast and published it about a year or so ago. I think it's only like 28 pages, but every page is illustrated. I mean, there's like a couple sentences per page. It doesn't look like a lot, but it took like a year to put this thing together and get all the proofing. And it's mind-boggling how many things you have to overcome to get through that and actually get the product out there. So I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I got to get that book now. I didn't realize you had that book.
I need to make those $4 from that sale. So please hurry up and buy it.
Use it for deal flow, Seth. Just use it for deal flow and relationship building. You'll make a ton of money from it.
Awesome. So you teach something called the burn process. What is that? And if we applied burn to a land deal conversation with a seller, what would most investors realize they're doing wrong?
That is a great question. So burn happened because we're doing long form interviews, 8 hours plus. The better we got at the interview process, the more transformative the interview itself became for the interviewee. We could almost time it. We would call it the turning of the tides, of like somewhere between 1 and 3 o'clock. When we're wrapping up, they're going to have an aha moment that's going to change the direction of their book. So we're at the end of the day and they go, you know what? Boom, aha moment. We love it. It's amazing. Now they're going, though, this book needs to go this direction. That's where I'm going to go with my life. And I'd be like, you're right. And shoot, we just did this whole day. And that was back in the day, Seth, when I would have in the room with me an interviewer, a writer, a transcriptionist, a person transcribing it live, like boom, 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 typing away. It was awesome. And we'd have everybody in a room. But now we just wrote this book that we got to go rewrite now. And I would say, like, I agree with you. This is true. But now I'm writing a book twice, getting paid once. It was breaking my business. So once we did this, where we had an Inc. 5000 company come in, 2 CEOs were in the room for 12 hours. They went away. They had that aha moment. We left and they called me up and they were not going to finish their book. And I'm like, you guys paid me to do this. Like, let's do it. And they're like, we got what we need. And they went and rebranded their whole business, an Inc. 5000 company. And so I was like, there's something happening here we need to pay attention to. And so my wife was like, we're going to put me in a room and do the same process. So it was me and like 6, 7 other people. And, now you can do it with AI where it's like, hey, we can pull from this interview and make social media content. Well, back in that day, I had a person getting all of my social media notes, like a live human being, like, hey, here's a great social media post out of what you just said. So we had the whole thing happening. I'm used to like getting all the people in the right room and making a lot of things happen in a short period of time when you got the right people and the right process. Burn came about from doing that, going, why are these people having this transformational experience? And my team was asking me, Jeremy, how can somebody tell you their story and you make a whole book outline from it? You go into a room for 2 hours, you come out with an outline that makes sense to everybody and nobody knows how it happened. So that was another problem for me. So it was reverse engineering hundreds of these stories. And I started to see a pattern, Seth. So our life works in cycles like the earth works in seasons. And if we understand the seasons, we understand how to operate. Like it's winter in South Dakota, I'm not going to wear flip-flops. Very simple. But imagine if I didn't have that knowledge of the seasons. It actually looks beautiful right now. Sun's out, it looks gorgeous. I could go outside, have flip-flops, and wonder why my feet are cold. And I could play this out. I could waste all kinds of time frustrated about that. I could spend all kinds of resources to try to solve that problem. Like I could get a heater. I could get all these silly things. I could be mad at God. Like, God, I am out here trying to disciple people in the streets and my toes are purple. Why are you not helping me right now? We have to exercise wisdom of the seasons. Our life works in cycles like the earth works in seasons. Burn was a framework for how we understood the cycles of our life. So we know, what is the story of my life? How do I tell that story well? And when is the right time for me to tell that story? Like comedic timing. When is the right timing? That's what burn is. The concept is, Seth, if you throw a bunch of materials into a fire, only the things of lasting value withstand the flames. You're going to have diamonds, gold, and steel. That's what we do with people's lives. We can maybe do this right now with people's story. You want to burn it to find the things of lasting value. Diamonds that display beauty through testimony, steel that gives people strength, gold that's valuable for other people that they'll pay you for it. And we would find these things in people's lives and their stories and extract those things of value and then learn, how do you story tell around these things that lands with the right audience at the right time?
Is it possible that things that are worthwhile and of value would burn away and disappear, and you don't want to do that?
The burn is a forward process. Just because you have a bunch of gold doesn't mean you want to take it with you on this next phase of your journey. So you're going to go put it over in the safe. And I know where it is, and I'll come back to it if I want it. Just because it is valuable and it helped you through that season you're in, or whatever the case may be, doesn't mean you need to take it with you to the next one. What you extract is relevant to what you're trying to do in that moment.
Well, I'm wondering, can you think of any moments in your land business where not telling the full story would have cost you a deal, and how leaning into the truth actually created trust instead?
There was. So I sent a blind offer to a guy, 4 acres, offered him 12. He called me back and said, I would take 20 for it. And he's just like, what's the deal? Every deal maker is a storyteller. You got to know how much of the story to tell and when. I was like trying to feel him out of like, what is he going to have capacity for, or what is he going to want to know? I simply, like a good storyteller is also a good story listener. I asked him, how did you get this land? What was the original plan? Was there anything that changed? Like all the questions people ask initially to sellers, right? And he had mentioned to me, I got this with my dad. He passed away. Now I'm too old to want to do something with it. We were going to develop it. More so than a regular seller, he wanted to know, what are you going to do with it? And I said, well, I'm an investor, so I am going to resell this. And he goes, are you just going to resell it? And like, he really wanted to know, like, is something going to happen to this? And I said, here's what I'm going to do. If everything goes well, I'm going to rezone this property. It's 4 acres. It can only be split up into 2 2-acre lots. I want to have 4 1-acre lots. I'm going to make sure all of the utilities are there. I'm going to get as far along with the utility companies as I can before they have to see a site plan. I'm going to clear it, make it pretty, and I want to sell it to people who want to build. Not just having a lot sit there, but they want to build. And like one of the best subdivisions in that whole little market I was looking at was right across the street. And so that is what got the deal done. He still needed the money. It's not like he didn't care about the money. He's like, I need at least 20. And I didn't know if I could give it to him at that time. But he wanted to know, and he cared about what he wanted. I call these sellers desire lost sellers. He had a desire. It didn't happen. And sometimes you storytelling around what you're going to do fulfills that desire they had through you. He cared. He wanted to know what I did. And I just sent him a plat map down the road. So here it is. That deal, we got into it for 20, broke it up into 4 lots, did the whole rezone, subdivide. It was about a 6-month process for that. Cleared it, make it pretty, got all the utility paperwork as far along as we could. It was like 19, 22, 27, and 28 was what we sold those lots for. So it did well for me and the investors. And if I wouldn't have been able or willing to really just say, here's what I'm going to do, present that well to him, and also just like really listen to that guy a lot. I spent like a good hour on the phone with him, like on the initial call. It was obvious it mattered. So if I was to conceal my motivations, just try to story tell a little bit differently, where I'm not telling him the whole thing, it wouldn't have worked with him, I don't think. He wanted to know that was going to get developed. It had some junk on it. It looked not good. It was right across the street from some great land. The neighbors really did oppose it. There were some issues there. I did work with the state for the first time in Arizona for that deal, but that's where storytelling got the deal.
Rewinding a little bit back to when we were talking about your Sprinter van season, when there were weeks when you could only work like 10 to 15 hours a week, but you still needed to produce like 15 to 20K. Under that kind of pressure, you don't have a whole lot of time or energy to waste. I'm wondering, How did you do that? Like, what did you ruthlessly stop doing? And what did you focus your time and energy on to make that possible? Like, was there one daily discipline or something that held things together when it all felt fragile?
A lot of spiritual disciplines during that time. But like when we're getting into practical, tactical work, I stopped having coffee conversations. I couldn't have them. And I got rid of my office because I just wasn't going to be there. And it just didn't make sense. I had a great office, but people knew where to find me. So like nobody could kind of find me. So I stopped having random conversations. It was like finding a way to get comfortable one step at a time. And I stopped trying to figure things out so far down the way because I really couldn't. Like if I have to think about the next 4 weeks, there was a period of time where like 4 weeks was too overwhelming to think about how this is all going to happen. I'm just going to do the next deal. I'm going to do the next deal and I'm going to be setting up as many other deals as possible. I'm always going to have marketing going out. And that was the thing, is like stopping trying to figure the whole thing out and de-risk everything versus here's the next step. I stopped doing business in all kinds of different counties. I found one county and I found a 10-mile radius in that county and I zoned into that thing. Somebody called me yesterday. Hey, I see you buy a lot of land over here. I said, yeah. And they're like, I've got this deal and this deal. And I was like, what's the APN number? And he found the APN number. I said, what's it zoned? He didn't really know. I said, here's what it's zoned for. Like, I know the APN numbers. I know where the water lines are. I mail water lines. I just understood that county. And it helped me in my due diligence. It helped me pre-sell. Like, I never did double closes. I always took title, but it helped me build investor relationships. So I had deep relationships. There's a couple people who would say like I helped them build a 6-figure land business just from the deals I would bring to them because I just did a lot of volume and I really understood the market. And the thing about marketing for me is you only market what's true. What is true? I'm only going to say what's true. And if I can't say the truth, I just don't say it. There's no deal. So they trusted me. So that was the other thing, is I stopped having a ton of relationships. And it's riskier, you could say, but I really focused on adding value to a handful of people that I did a lot of deals with and who did a lot of deals with me.
Well, that's really interesting because there's several different software product services out there right now that specialize in market research for land investors, where, look at the whole country, figure out which states and counties are the best and all this stuff. I think those things certainly have their place, but it's really interesting to hear how you just dove really deep on one county. And not even just one county, like a 10-mile radius or something like that. I know other people who maybe not to that extreme, but they may say, nope, I just work in this one state and I know everyone and everything about this state. Like, I'm going to outperform everybody because I have the deepest relationships. I spend lots of time on the phone with all the people that matter. So like, they're not trying to go all over the country. Like, they know what works. And sounds like you went even deeper in one county. But it makes me wonder, like, could you do that in any county? Or is there something really specific about whatever county you chose that made that possible? Market research really is required to find those little honey holes and make it work. Or could you just work really hard and put really deep roots anywhere and make this work that well?
I don't think so. I think you got to have the fundamentals down. You got to know the velocity of the market. Is it trending upwards? You got to have the fundamentals there. But that's what I'm trying to think through right now. And what I'm doing is I do think when the environment is right, you can do that just about anywhere. I think out of necessity, I did that, Seth, but it was a huge advantage to me. I pulled, it's probably not over $1 million, but it's not under $500,000 out of that one little sector. And it's just been a fantastic place. I do think there's other places. I think there's probably not like hundreds and hundreds of them maybe, but maybe there are. I don't know. I'm just starting to peek out and going, what environment and the conditions made this good? And I think the other factor though too is like, I was willing to go there. I went there once a month. And for a couple years now, I've gone there once a month. I've been to all their board of supervisors meetings, planning and zoning meetings. The county knows me. The contractors know me. There's a lot of value to that. And I can send somebody out to say, hey, take a peek at this lot. I'm not going to be able to get there before due diligence is over. I just need to make sure nothing crazy has happened in it or around it. And I can send people out there that I trust and that they know how I work now. It's a huge advantage. And I think it has been the advantage for me in land.
When you say you go there, you mean you physically go there?
Yes.
How big of a deal is that? Like, if you were not able to do that, would you be just as successful?
For me, no. Two things though. In the beginning, I probably did like 50 deals there before I ever went there, but I was wholesaling those deals. So I'd take title and I just flip it over to a wholesaler. I just knew the market. I never went there. The market at that time was so fast that could be done. Then I started to see the market cool down and I started to say, I'm going to do rezones and subdivides to help my timing in the market and help extract more value out of these deals. So I'd still do the deal as if I was flipping it, but then I'd layer on all this value that gave me even greater margins to do less deals, right? So when I started to get into that game, me physically being there was critical. When I would do the rezones, neighbors would object. The county itself would object. The state had an objection for me at one point. I would have to show up to talk to the neighbors. And that's just kind of my approach. If you're going to complain, I'm going to knock on your door. Let's talk. And there we get into storytelling more and that whole concept. But I would show up to the meetings. I would stay for the whole meeting. I would sit in the front row. So that board would see me to the point where I was like, I would wear the same outfit basically. So they would remember me. Like, I'm not a fly by night guy. I'm here. I built relationships with all kinds of groups, all that kind of stuff. To do those deals where we're rezones and subdivides requiring county approval through multiple boards, I do feel like it was very important for me to be there. If I couldn't be there, I would have a consultant locally who did that as a living do it for me, which I never did.
So when you say that like the fundamentals and environment are right about this market, what about this market makes it work so well for you? Is there anything that comes to mind that's true about this place that isn't true in most other places?
Yeah. So some of those fundamentals are, number one, how many deals are getting done? How many are for sale? How many are sold over 3 months, 6 months, 9, 12, 24, 36? What are all those basics, like the for sales and the solds? How much volume is being done? I do want to be in a place there's a lot of volume. I'm trying to get comfortable with it, but I am really nervous unless it's like a needle in the haystack where I have something where there's not a lot of volume being done and I don't have a lot of comps, but it's a crazy smoking deal. That's not my niche. I'm not comfortable yet doing that. I know that works though. I'll figure that out now that I've got some time here. So it was velocity. I looked where other investors were working. Like, are there other investors here? Because if there's other investors there, there's probably some deals there. So that matters. If there's other investors in that market that are really active, at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, I could probably sell it to one of them as long as I bought it right. But then I just look at too, is there utilities? The place I'm in, there's very specific zoning, which I do like. There's very specific due process around the rezoning process. So the county jurisdiction matters. It's not in a city. It's in a county, a pretty densely populated part of the county. I don't do a lot of rural stuff like that's super rural. They're having right in that close proximity, anywhere from 10 to 25, 30 neighbors within that 300 to 500 foot radius of that property. That's what really I look for, velocity. And then I just start calling people in that market. I'll call other investors. I'll call realtors, and I'll just get a lot of information on what types of properties sell, what's hot there, what's not, what are all the roadblocks to get through. There's a lot of nuance when you get into utilities too. Like there's some lots that can be like, hey, this lot right here has water. This lot right here has the water line, but can't get water. Like I've had to petition the county to let me get water to properties that had the water line there, but they couldn't get water. They're like, nope, it's on the north side of the road. It has to be on the south side. Those are also like little niche opportunities I've found within this market because I'm like, oh, that's a great thing. You just got to go through this kind of clunky process to get the water there. You got to go deep, in my opinion. If you want to really extract value out of a market, go super deep so you understand all these nuance. Like me and you could talk all day about the nuance of this one little 10-mile place I'm doing business in because I just know it so well. It's a double-edged sword though. Now I'm like, I'm going to go to another market and I'm pretty risk adverse. So it's been hard for me to do.
So like if something suddenly happened, I don't know what that would be, laws changing or who knows what, suddenly you can't work in this market anymore. You got to go find some other place. How hard would that be for you? Is it just a matter of, okay, well, I know these things all have to be true, so I'm going to start looking for those truths in different markets.
That's what I'm doing. Yep, exactly it. Whatever strategy you work with, how do you replicate that into other markets? I think you just need to know what critical factors are there. And I'm giving you some of them right now, like off the dome. But like I'm in Texas right now. I'm in Oklahoma. I'm looking in Missouri. I'm looking in the Carolinas. I'm looking kind of broadly, and I'm going to narrow down a couple other markets like that where I can really just go deep, that I can see that same kind of environment and opportunity. And even like the culture of sellers, the culture of the realtors, all those things matter. That's what I look for.
Are you going to physically go to those places too once you find them?
Yep. Already been. And the other factor for me has been I want to go to a place that's drivable for me. Right now I'm in Arizona. I've got to hop on a plane or else it's 20 hours. So I want to have a drivable distance. I want to be able to bring my boys with me. We love to camp. We love to do, four-wheeling and stuff like that. I want to be able to do some of those things. So that's like the other X factor with, I think, each investor you have to go little by little with to figure out the right solution that's going to deliver the results you want.
On the whole note of your sons and your Sprinter van, years from now, when your sons look back at the chapter of your life, when you all lived in the Sprinter van and the land deals you've done and the sacrifices and the changes you've made, is there anything that you hope they understand about why you chose that path?
The thing we wanted to teach the boys is like, this is how we fight our battles. This is how you handle hard things. And that's what I hope they take from these times is like my sons are like super bonded by this. My wife and I are super bonded. We have a whole different life. It was our dream. It wouldn't have happened. I had to be like shooken out of my mentality because I get a very fixed mentality. So I'm like 10-mile radius, great. I have a very fixed mentality sometimes. So that's my biggest hope. And I think that's what we can do as parents is when we do have these problems, we don't have to always like shield our children from them. We can storytell around them appropriately for the age they're in and that's relevant to them so that as we're going through things as their parents and we're living life for the first time too, they can get the wisdom that we have in their own way so it can be deployed in their life when they need it.
Well, it's a great reminder talking to you just that life's problems are kind of just like a blessing in disguise. And boy, do I have a hard time looking at it that way. I don't enjoy life's puzzles. I don't enjoy challenges to overcome. Some people just like love that stuff, but I don't. I like being cozy and comfortable and things are predictable and I know the future and all that stuff. But holy cow, like if you didn't ever have these challenges and like really hard moments in life, how would you ever grow? It's like you should see every little speed bump in life as like a positive. Like, okay, we're getting better through this. I can't wait to see how much better I'm going to get when this is all done. I got to work on that. So I appreciate the reminders.
It's not natural for me either. I don't think it's natural for anybody, but it is the thing. If you wanted to say like, what hill would I die on? Your problems are the keys. You will be successful because of your problems and how you handle them. No question. And we don't have to be perfect. We just have to be relentless. That's it.
Well, one last question as we wrap this up, and you may have already kind of answered this in different ways, but if a land investor is listening right now and they're feeling stretched thin or overwhelmed, what's one mindset shift you learned during your Sprinter van season that could immediately lower their stress? Anything else worth mentioning that you haven't already talked about?
It's simply this. Know all the steps. You got to know all the steps, but then you just do one step at a time. You don't got to be perfect. You just got to be relentless. You got to know what your process is, have the right people around you when you need them, have the right people to call on when you need them, but it's one step at a time. Growing your business is a one step at a time deal. You don't need to know 10 steps. You can have a strategy for that, but also being okay with the strategy's got to change now. And I think that's the key with right now, like the market's changing rapidly. I love the market we're in. I love it being bad or not great or not super fast. You just got to know that and take one step at a time. And so if you got kids, if you've got a job or a business or anything like that, I would say lock into a good mentor or a coach. That's what I did with you, Seth. I watched all your videos. I did your courses, your curriculum. Find somebody who's got a process so you can know every step. You can have a mentorship and a community like you provide with REtipster and everything too. Your Facebook groups are pretty key for me, finding knowledge and understanding things, and then just take it one step at a time. This industry is really built out now. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of good people. You can solve just about any problem, but you just got to take the first step.
Well, Jeremy, appreciate you following along over the years. Appreciate you being willing to have this conversation with me. If people want to find out more about you or connect with you in any way, is there any place they should go to do that?
I think just find me on Facebook in like the REtipster community. I'm there. I'm talking about deals. I'm doing deals. I'm always looking for deals and helping people with deals. Get into the REtipster community on Facebook or in the forum. That's where I kind of hang out the most on Facebook and stuff, is in your groups.
Awesome. No, I appreciate you being active there as well. I'll link to that Facebook group in the show notes for this episode, retipster.com/255. Jeremy, again, awesome to talk to you. Good to know you. And to all the listeners out there, we'll talk to you again in the next episode.
Thanks, Seth. Appreciate it.